I was the only actor in the industry who openly admitted to being gay, while Ryan Pierce was infamous for being homophobic. Later, when a scene of mine with another male celebrity trended, Ryan pinned me down beneath him. "Baby, how should I punish you?" A foreign ringtone echoed through the room. I quickly grabbed my phone, turned it off, and prepared to go back to sleep. But just as I was about to close my eyes, a large hand wrapped around my waist. The warmth of his skin pressed against mine. Drowsily, I opened my eyes and looked around. The room was dimly lit. The sheets were pure white. I was in a hotel. I jolted upright. Why am I in a hotel? Shaking my head, I tried to recall what had happened the night before. Yesterday evening, after wrapping up the final scene, the production crew had thrown a wrap party. Although I didn't have many scenes, the director still invited me to join. Before I left, my manager had warned me repeatedly. "Julian, your alcohol tolerance is terrible. Don't drink too much." I nodded quickly. I know. But at the party, I was pressured into drinking glass after glass. Just as I was about to down another one, a hand reached out and stopped me. Ryan looked at me with exasperation. "If you can't handle it, don't force yourself." Even though I didn't have to drink anymore after that, I still ended up collapsing onto the table. My last memory was of Ryan carrying me to the car. After that, he booked a room for me. And then, I accidentally pulled him onto the bed. Lips brushed against lips. Ryan immediately pulled away, but I kissed him back. And then, things happened that words couldn't describe. Later, when I could no longer bear it, I had tried to run away many times. But Ryan Pierce always pulled me back. The scattered fragments of my memory slowly pieced themselves together. My gaze landed on the man sleeping soundly beside me. Ryan Pierce looked utterly satisfied. The scratches on his back were a deep red, standing out starkly against his bare skin. "I'm screwed." I frowned and buried my head under the blanket. Having a low alcohol tolerance was one thing, but having no self-control was another. How could I get drunk and end up in bed with someone? And of all people, why Ryan Pierce? Everyone knew how much this cold-hearted film emperor despised gay people. How bad was it? Ryan Pierce was the male lead of this movie. And every time a staff member with an ambiguous gender identity got too close, he would immediately say, "Keep your distance," especially when I was around. After saying that, he would even glance in my direction. Wasn't that a warning? I didn't dare imagine how devastated he would be when he woke up. What's done was done. I had only one choice: run. I carefully stepped down from the bed, hurriedly picked up the scattered clothes on the floor, and put them on as fast as I could. Without waiting for Ryan Pierce to wake up, I grabbed all my belongings and bolted out of the hotel. Just to be safe, I even put on a face mask. The moment I stepped out, I sent my assistant my location and then found a random cafe downstairs to wait for my ride. 10 minutes later, my assistant texted, "Julian, I'm here." As soon as I buckled my seatbelt, my assistant, driving the car, glanced at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "Julian, why were you at a hotel? Didn't you go home last night?" I awkwardly explained, "I got too drunk last night, so I just found a hotel to crash in." Now that I was sitting in the car, the soreness in a certain place became even more apparent. Ryan Pierce was seriously too much. He nearly nailed me to the bed. Meanwhile, back in the hotel, the man still deep in sleep was abruptly awakened by the sound of a ringing phone. Ryan Pierce turned over, instinctively reaching for the person beside him, only to grasp at nothing but air. He rubbed his forehead and answered the call. "Mr. Pierce, you're not home? The housekeeper said you were gone all night." His voice dropped a notch. "Yeah, I'll send you my location, come pick me up." Memories from the night before flooded his mind. Slowly sitting up in bed, he felt the faint sting of the scratch marks on his back. Julian's flushed face from last night flashed through his mind. A nearly imperceptible smirk appeared on Ryan Pierce's lips. He reached down, picked up Julian's tie from the corner of the room, and gently ran his fingers over it. "I had no schedule today, and my manager told me to take 2 days off to rest." As soon as I got home, I changed my clothes and threw myself straight onto the bed. I hid in the darkness, under the covers, I could hide for now. But I couldn't hide forever. Would Ryan Pierce take this chance to blacklist me? Just thinking about it made me miserable. I ordered takeout. Food and survival came first. Everything else could wait. Tears welled up at the corners of my eyes. I ate while crying and finished 2 whole pizzas. Just as I finished eating, my manager called. Julian, we got a notice. Next Thursday, you'll be filming an interview show. Stay home for the next few days. Adjust your condition. And get some rest. Got it, Linda. I understand. I might not even make it to the filming day. Sob sob sob. After hanging up, I lay there, mentally preparing for my doom. I waited for days, but even as the filming date approached, I still hadn't heard anything from Ryan Pierce. The weight in my chest finally eased, at least a little. Maybe he thought the same as me. Just pretend nothing happened. After all, talking about it wouldn't benefit either of us. I arrived at the studio half an hour early and sat quietly in the dressing room while getting my makeup done. The room was lively with chatter. As the makeup artist worked on me, she suddenly whispered curiously, Julian, do you really like guys? I joked. Why, you got someone to introduce to me? She nodded enthusiastically. I know a model, 1.9 meters tall. Long legs for days. Want his number? Before I could reply, there was a knock at the door. Everyone in the dressing room turned to look. Ryan Pierce stood in the doorway, tall, imposing, his gaze locked onto me. Under his stare, I instinctively looked away, feeling a little guilty. But then, he strode toward me in long steps and grabbed my arm. I was dragged into an empty room. Just as I opened my mouth to explain, he cut me off. You slept with me, and now you're asking for someone else's number? My heart, which had just calmed down, instantly shot back up. Ryan Pierce stared straight at me. Or, does actor Julian not want to take responsibility? Flustered, I shook my head quickly. No, Mr. Pierce. About that night, I apologize. Hearing this, he leaned in close to my ear and whispered, Are you apologizing for throwing up on me, or for sleeping with me? I threw up on Ryan Pierce too? The way he emphasized those last 2 words was too blunt. My face burned red as I clenched my teeth and answered. Both. Hearing my response, Ryan Pierce slowly said, If it's the first, I don't mind. But since you slept with me, how do you plan to take responsibility? I muttered under my breath. How many times do you plan to bring this up? What did you say? He asked. I lifted my head and looked him straight in the eye. At the end of the day, it was you who slept with me. Ryan Pierce raised an eyebrow. Oh, so, how do you want me to take responsibility? He backed me into a corner, my back pressing against the cold wall. No need to take responsibility. I said, let's just pretend it never happened. We're both adults, after all. With that, I turned to leave, but he grabbed my collar. Behind me, his voice carried a hint of grievance. I never expected Julian to be so generous. But just like that, my first time is gone. He sighed dramatically, as if I wasn't also a first-timer. If you really don't want me to take responsibility, I won't force you, he added. His words sounded nice, but his grip on my collar remained firm, and even tightened. So this was really bothering him. Huh? He had no intention of letting me off. Just as we were locked in a silent struggle, footsteps approached from outside, then came a knock on the door. Gentlemen, it's time for filming. Seizing my chance, I bolted. Behind me, Ryan Pierce watched my panicked escape, a faint smirk appearing on his lips. Today's filming was for a casual in-studio interview show. Simple enough. By coincidence, or perhaps fate, Ryan Pierce and I were seated next to each other. The shoot went smoothly, right until the very end when the host asked, Mr. Pierce, is there anything from filming this movie that left a lasting impression on you? Everyone on stage turned to Ryan, waiting for his response. He slowly turned toward me, his gaze unreadable, and said, On the night of the wrap party, something very interesting happened, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate to share. His eyes lingered on me. The host, sensing the tension, asked curiously, Does it have something to do with Mr. Julian Walker? Ryan let out a deep, meaningful sigh and started. That night, Both Mr. Walker and I were drunk, and then Mr. Walker. Ryan Pierce was insane. I immediately clapped a hand over his mouth and blurted out. And then I threw up on him. I forced out a laugh. Ha ha, so he really remembered that part. Huh, he didn't move my hand away. Just as I was about to pull back, I suddenly felt a warm sensation in my palm. Ryan Pierce had pressed his lips against it. Startled, I jerked my hand back. My face burning. Even after filming ended, I still hadn't recovered. Back in the dressing room, my assistant spotted me and hurried over. Julian, are you running a fever? Why is your face so red? She reached out to feel my forehead. I'm not sick. Taking a deep breath, I told her, I have some unfinished business with Mr. Pierce. You don't have to wait for me. Go home first. As soon as I finished speaking, she immediately agreed, grabbing her bag and leaving in a flash, probably afraid I'd change my mind. I looked around but didn't see Ryan Pierce. Only his assistant was there. I walked up and asked, "Where's Mr. Pierce?" He went to the dressing room. If you need to talk to him, you can wait there. Since I had nothing better to do, I nodded and headed toward the dressing room. Sooner or later, I had to face him. Standing at the door, I took a deep breath and knocked. A cold voice responded from inside. Who is it? It's me, I answered. His tone softened slightly. Come in. I wasn't expecting him to change so quickly. Without thinking much, I pushed the door open. And immediately froze. Ryan Pierce was shirtless. His pale skin practically glowed under the light. His chest rising and falling with his breath. Below that were sculpted abs, 8-pack abs, and sharply defined hip lines. If I looked closely, I could even see faint veins beneath his skin. I swallowed hard. The warmth in my face returned with a vengeance. Before I could stare any longer, Ryan quickly put on a shirt and walked toward me. Why is your face so red? Snapping out of my daze, I blurted. The weather today is so white. I mean, those abs are so hot. I was doomed. Ryan Pierce smirked. What did you need to talk to me about? Only then did I remember why I came. Mr. Pierce, I understand what you mean. He grabbed my arm, somewhat anxiously. You understand what I mean? I gritted my teeth and nodded. Isn't it that you want to get revenge on me? Mr. Pierce, I completely understand how you feel. As a straight man, accidentally doing that with someone like me, a gay man. But what's done is done. Talking about it will only harm both of us. I can only try my best to make it up to you. To calm your anger. Ryan Pierce silently listened to me, his expression darkening. His voice was hoarse. Straight man? Calm my anger? He curled his lips into a slow smirk. Since it happened, let's see it through to the end. I looked straight into his eyes and continued. Ryan, then what should I do to calm you down? A moment of silence. Ryan Pierce's gaze was unreadable as he slowly spoke. You want to calm me down. Is that right? I played along, nodding eagerly. He continued, then it depends on whether Julian is sincere enough. I am very sincere. Ryan leaned close to my ear, curling his lips. I'm looking forward to your future performance. Right then, his phone vibrated as if he had received a message. Without another word, he stood up and left. I followed him out of the dressing room. Ryan stretched lazily. Sitting for too long really hurts my back. I immediately stepped forward and massaged his back. Is this pressure okay? His waist was quite slim. And from behind, Ryan's proportions were incredible, broad shoulders, a narrow waist. My hands slowly moved to his waist. Kneading for a while. Unable to resist, I wanted to touch a little more. Ryan seemed to notice something unusual about my touch and chuckled. Julian, does my waist feel nice to touch? I quickly pulled my hands back, not knowing how to respond. Do you like touching it? No, I stammered. It's just so small. He turned to me, pretending to ponder. Oh, so my waist is both small and nice to touch? Since you've said that, I can't deny it. He stared at me. Julian, it seems like you have quite a few thoughts about me. Just then, Ryan's assistant appeared at the stairway. Ryan, we should head to the next filming location now. Saved at last. Then I won't bother you anymore. Have a smooth shoot. I quickly turned to leave. Ryan's voice rang out behind me. Who was it just now that said they wanted to calm me down? Julian, do you remember? My foot froze mid-step. Ryan casually draped an arm over my shoulder and told his assistant. Julian will be coming with me. I was forced to sit with him in the back seat of the van. Ryan stretched out his long legs and suddenly asked, do you like people who are 190 centimeters tall? Huh? I was caught off guard. He muttered to himself. 190 centimeters isn't good. 190 centimeters is too tall. I think 188 centimeters is just right. The official height of the best actor is 188 centimeters. He's definitely showing off to me. I didn't respond. Ryan glanced at me, as if looking for agreement. Helpless, I finally said, Ryan's height is just right. Hearing that, he nodded in satisfaction and looked away. Soon, we arrived at the set. It seemed like he was about to do a magazine photo shoot. Ryan led me to his private lounge. I was prepared to be ordered around. But instead, he reached out and ruffled my hair. Stay here and wait for me. After the shoot, I'll take you out for a meal. So, he brought me here just to have a meal together? Well, if this was what it took to calm him down, then a few extra meals wouldn't hurt. After Ryan left, I passed the time scrolling through my phone. Not long after, there was a knock on the door. Surprised, I muttered, that was fast. He's done already? I opened the door, only to see a familiar face. Ethan Carter. He stood at the entrance. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. Julian, it's really you. My voice was hoarse. Help me. At that moment, the parking lot was completely deserted. Not a single soul in sight. Ryan Pierce suppressed something inside him. His Adam's apple bobbing slightly. Yet he forced himself to stay calm. Julian asked softly, if the person saving you right now was Ethan Carter, would you ask him for help too? I shook my head firmly, trying to use the last bit of rationality I had left to reply. I don't need anyone's help. As soon as I finished speaking, Ryan got into the car and locked the door. He confirmed once more, only me, no one else. Even though my consciousness was hazy, my face grew even hotter when I heard those words. Ryan was still waiting for my answer. I looked at him, my eyes welling up, and gently nodded. It was almost impossible to see my reaction clearly, but Ryan slowly rolled up his sleeves. Then, he pulled me into his embrace. The confined space of the car. The effect of alcohol and medication. Before long, I lost consciousness and drifted into sleep. The veins on Ryan's arm bulged. Looking at the disheveled person beside him, he curled his lips helplessly, restraining himself once again. When I woke up, I found myself lying on an unfamiliar bed, dressed in clean pajamas. This was not the crisp white sheets of the hotel. As my mind cleared, fragmented memories pieced themselves together. I sat up abruptly. Oh no, it happened again. Just then, the sound of the door opening echoed. I turned my head slowly. When my eyes met Ryan Pierce's, I quickly lowered my gaze. Awake? He asked calmly. Still feeling unwell? I had the doctor prescribe some medicine. At this moment, I just wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. The person in front of me was acting as if nothing had happened last night. I cautiously said, Julian, thank you for last night. Ryan gently smoothed down my messy hair. I was only gone for a few days. And you already can't take care of yourself? His voice carried a hint of indulgence. After speaking, he placed a glass of water and the medicine on the table before standing up and leaving the room, leaving me alone on the bed with my heart pounding. After taking the medicine, I tried to calm my emotions. Ryan hadn't mentioned what happened in the car. That was good. It saved me from further embarrassment. Ryan's house was a small villa. When I went downstairs, he had just finished setting the breakfast table. Seeing me, he said in a gentle voice, "Come eat. I'll take you home afterward." I quickly walked over and flattered him. "Julian, you can cook too? That's amazing." Ryan seemed to enjoy the compliment, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly. "From now on, I'll always cook for you." Always cook for me? Shouldn't he say that to his future partner instead? But I didn't voice this thought. Instead, I buried my head in my food. eating voraciously. When I finished the last bite of fried egg, I glanced at the napkins and said, "Julian, could you pass me a napkin?" Hearing this, Ryan casually pulled out a napkin. But before handing it to me, he retracted it. Then, he stood up, walked over, and gently wiped my lips for me. The atmosphere suddenly became ambiguous. Ryan lightly brushed my lips through the napkin, his warm breath making my face burn with embarrassment. His voice was low and husky. "Feeling unwell again?" I shook my head frantically. No, my face just turns red easily." Only then did Ryan let go of my lips. After breakfast, I searched for my clothes but couldn't find them anywhere. Ryan had already changed into a fresh outfit. "What are you looking for?" he asked. I looked at him in confusion. "Where are my clothes?" He answered calmly. "The trash can outside." I was dumbfounded. "Why did you throw my clothes away?" "They were dirty," he replied nonchalantly. I suddenly recalled last night's terrifying scene, and a wave of fear surged in my heart. Thank goodness Ryan had arrived in time. If he had been even a minute late, I didn't dare imagine the consequences. The person beside me noticed my thoughts. Ryan reached out and pulled me into his arms. "This won't happen again." The faint scent of mint wafted through the air, and something inside me softened. I looked up at Ryan and whispered, "Julian, you're really good to me." Ryan chuckled. His handsome face slowly leaned closer. His gaze dropped to my lips, fixating on them. The next moment, I felt a warm, soft sensation. My mind went blank. I instinctively pushed him away. "Why did you kiss me?" Ryan looked down at me, his voice calm. "Why can't I kiss my boyfriend?" I was stunned. "Boyfriend?" he continued. "Did you forget what you said last night?" My mind worked at full speed. I didn't remember saying anything about dating last night. Seeing my reaction, Ryan looked slightly aggrieved. "You said you only needed me? Doesn't that mean you like me? And if you like me, doesn't that mean you want to date me?" I gaped at him. I never expected him to interpret it that way. "What are you talking about?" "I didn't say that." Ryan narrowed his eyes. "So you're that open-minded? You'd say that to just any friend?" I quickly covered his mouth, afraid he would say something even more outrageous. No wonder the atmosphere had felt strange all morning. Ryan thought we were dating, while I thought we had silently agreed to pretend nothing had happened. We were completely misunderstanding each other. "Julian, that's not what I meant." Ryan's gaze darkened. "So I was just imagining things?" I hurriedly denied it. No, that's not it," he continued. "Then let's settle both old and new debts." Huh? The person in front of me started calculating. "Last night, I helped you again. How do you plan to repay me this time?" I hesitated. "How about, I help you in return?" Ryan squinted. "You're quite generous." I mumbled. "Then, how do you want me to repay you?" He pressed me against the table, his voice teasing. "Are you sure you want me to say it out loud?" The pressure was overwhelming. I nodded slightly. Ryan looked at me, his gaze direct and intense. "Be my boyfriend." His voice was deep and cool. My heart pounded uncontrollably. "But," he pressed. "But what?" "But, aren't you straight?" Ryan chuckled beside my ear, then sighed. "Who told you I was straight?" I hesitated. When we were on set, you always told the male staff to keep their distance from you." He patiently listened to me, then helplessly replied, "I was afraid you'd misunderstand." Ryan brushed his nose against mine, his voice gentle. "Silly, I like you. Got it?" The information was too much to process at once. Ryan loosened his grip on me slightly and whispered, "Baby, I'll give you time to get used to being my boyfriend." He didn't say anything more, not giving me a chance to refuse. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my manager calling. "Julian, good thing Ryan was there last night. Make sure to properly thank him. Oh, by the way, have you seen the news? That old man has been sent to prison. Just rest at home for the next few days." While I was on the phone, Ryan Pierce had already taken a clean set of clothes from the bedroom. After I hung up, his voice was gentle. "Get changed. I'll take you home." Back at home, I rolled around on my bed, thinking about Ryan Pierce liking me. I buried my face in my pillow. the corners of my lips unconsciously curling up. Just as I was floating in happiness, I received a message from Ethan Carter. He asked me out for dinner. I thought about it for a moment before agreeing. Time passed quickly. That evening, I casually put on an outfit and headed to the restaurant. When I arrived, Ethan Carter was already waiting. He was dressed somewhat formally. I teased him, "Are you planning to confess your love?" He looked slightly flustered. Just then, a waiter slowly pushed a cart toward us. The difference was, on the cart sat a large bouquet of roses. Ethan Carter picked up the bouquet, his hands trembling slightly. "Julian, I already know your answer. But I still want to try once. I like you. Will you consider being with me? Is today some kind of confession day?" I looked into Ethan Carter's eyes and began to prepare my rejection. "You'll meet someone who suits you better than I do." The person in front of me seemed to have anticipated my answer. A hint of disappointment flashed across his face as he put the bouquet away. "I knew what you'd say. Then, I wish you and Ryan happiness." I didn't deny my relationship with Ryan Pierce and happily accepted Ethan Carter's blessing. Not wanting to waste food, we stayed for dinner. After finishing our meal, we each went our separate ways. After such an eventful day, I fell asleep almost as soon as I lay down. The next morning, I was woken up by the non-stop ringing of my phone. I groggily reached for it and answered, only to hear my manager's anxious voice. "Julian, check the trending searches. Where were you last night?" Confused, I hung up and forced myself awake before opening the hot search. Ethan Carter's confession, "Ethan Carter and Julian look so good together," was trending. Along with the headline were pictures and videos of me and Ethan Carter at the restaurant. Captured from every possible angle. "We were secretly photographed last night." I clicked on a random post. Aside from a few hate comments directed at me, most of the internet was enthusiastically shipping us. They look so good together. Ethan Carter's hands were shaking. A devoted little puppy. I'm about to faint. My favorite pilot and co-pilot. Just say yes. Why'd I feel like Julian doesn't look like he wants to agree? Stay away from my man. You shippers, stop deluding yourselves. I don't care. My ship is the sweetest. If I had known, I would have worn a mask last night. After grasping the situation, I called my manager back and explained everything. Only then did she feel somewhat relieved and started coordinating with Ethan Carter's management to discuss a public statement. Once I hung up, I checked the time. I happened to be hungry, so I ordered takeout. After washing up, I sat on the sofa, waiting. The doorbell rang, and I happily got up to answer it. But the person standing outside wasn't the delivery guy. Ryan Pierce stood at the door, holding the takeout I had just ordered. Before I could recover from my surprise, I blurted out, "Why are you here?" He walked straight into my apartment, placed the food on the table, then turned around and pressed me down onto the sofa. "If I didn't come, were you planning to let yourself end up with someone else?" His voice was deep as his slender fingers traced along my cheek. "Baby, tell me, how should I punish you?" Looking into his burning gaze, I hurriedly explained, "I'm not with him." Ryan Pierce's fingers slid down, playing with my collarbone as he continued, "But he confessed to you and even gave you flowers." The ticklish sensation on my collarbone made me uncomfortable. I wanted to escape, but there was nowhere to run. Ryan Pierce's voice was soft yet firm. "No running away." The distance between us grew smaller and smaller. If my heartbeat could be heard, I was sure the entire living room would be filled with its deafening rhythm. I was forced to meet his eyes. Ryan Pierce had no intention of letting me go. His gaze was filled with a deep infatuation, as if he wanted to completely devour me. He couldn't wait any longer. "Baby, will you be my boyfriend?" The air seemed to freeze. I was completely captivated by him. My voice trembled. I can. Immediately, Ryan Pierce wrapped his arms tightly around my waist. He leaned close to my ear, his husky voice filled with restraint. "Can I kiss you?" My lips pressed together as I gave an almost imperceptible nod. His warm lips covered mine. But unlike the fleeting kiss last night, this time, Ryan Pierce kissed me with an undeniable intensity. Only when I was on the verge of being unable to breathe did he finally let me go. Our lingering kiss was abruptly interrupted by the loud rumbling of my stomach. Ryan Pierce couldn't hold back his laughter. He got up and heated the food in the microwave. After eating, we sat together on the couch. The next morning, soft sunlight filtered through the curtains, gently illuminating the room. I woke up groggily, my body aching as if all my energy had been drained. The warmth beside me made me blink a few times before I realized I was still in Ryan Pierce's arms. He hadn't woken up yet, his steady breaths brushing against my hair. His face looked much softer in sleep compared to his usual sharp demeanor. I quietly observed him, my heart inexplicably pounding faster. Last night, everything between us had truly happened. There was no turning back now. Lost in thought, I was suddenly pulled tightly into a firm embrace. His deep, husky voice sounded right next to my ear, staring at me so intently first thing in the morning. Startled, I quickly turned my face away. But I still couldn't escape his amused gaze. Ryan chuckled softly, his hand gently stroking my hair. "Baby, did you sleep well?" I mumbled a vague response, not daring to look directly at him. But Ryan wasn't one to let things slide so easily. He lifted my chin, forcing me to face him. "I didn't hear your answer." It was fine," I stammered. "Just fine?" Ryan raised an eyebrow, then leaned in close to my ear, his voice dangerously low. "Then maybe we should try again tonight, see if I can make it better for you?" Flustered, I shoved him away, my face burning. "Stop saying nonsense, I have work to do." Ryan laughed, finally letting me go. He sat up, reached for me, and placed a gentle kiss on my forehead. "All right, I'll take you to work." I blinked at him. "That's not necessary, I can go by myself." Ryan didn't respond. Instead, he calmly got up and made a phone call. A few minutes later, I received a message from my manager. "Ryan Pierce just called me. He said you're taking a day off to rest. I have no objections. You figure it out yourself." I was stunned. I turned to Ryan, full of disbelief. "You decided that without asking me?" Ryan shrugged nonchalantly. "Baby, do you really think you have the energy to work after last night? Besides, I'm free today. I want to spend time with you." I was speechless, but I couldn't deny that my body was still exhausted. In the end, I sighed in defeat. "Fine, but just for today." Ryan smiled in satisfaction, pulling me close again as he whispered in my ear. "Then let's spend the whole day at home, just the two of us." That entire day, Ryan truly didn't leave my side. He prepared breakfast, took care of me in every little way, and even insisted I rest on the couch while he cleaned the apartment. Watching his tall figure in a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled up as he focused on housework, I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter. "Ryan, you really don't have to do all this," I said hesitantly. He glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. "Are you implying that I'm bad at housework?" "No, it's just, I'm not used to it." I smiled awkwardly. Ryan walked over, leaning down with one hand resting on the couch. His face was close to mine. "Then get used to it, because from now on, I'll be taking care of you every day." My heart pounded wildly. Just as I was about to stammer out a reply, my phone rang. It was my manager. I quickly picked up. "What's going on?" His voice was urgent. "Have you seen the news? Someone is spreading rumors about you and Ryan. They're claiming it's all just a publicity stunt." I frowned and opened my phone. Online, news about me and Ryan was spreading like wildfire. Negative comments were starting to surface, questioning if our relationship was real or just a strategy for attention. Ryan glanced at my screen, his expression darkening. He gently took the phone from my hand, set it aside, and pulled me into his arms. "Don't worry, I'll take care of this. You just need to trust me." Looking into his unwavering gaze, I nodded. No matter how big the storm, as long as Ryan was by my side, I believed we could overcome anything together.